Thank you. You can hear me all right? Excellent. Let's get started. First thing I have to say is I'm really happy that we are doing this session towards the end of the conference, because all the context that's needed for this session has already been set by all the nice people who have come before me and spoken here, right? We will talk about the future of GBS, as well as the future of workforce, right? While most of the people have talked about future in one way or the other, they have talked about short to medium term future, we will try and talk about a little bit longer, right? 3 to 5 years. Your crystal ball, what do you think will happen to GBS? Your thinking hats, you know. And the most important thing is that we will have a lot of fun and a lot of interaction. So please make sure you get the QR codes on your phone right now. It's not just for the questions, we will do polls, because I am not giving any answers here. I'm asking the questions, I'm giving you the ideas. Answers will come from you for yourselves. So it will be very interesting to see what you think of the future of GBS. Yeah. I'll stay here for a second so everyone gets the QR code. All right. To start with fun, you see my LinkedIn profile with multi-billionaire. I'm not. I wouldn't be here if I was. So I don't see any phones up anymore. I think we got it. All right. Zurich Insurance. I hope you all have heard about Zurich. If you haven't, there's 2 things to know about it. One, it's a fantastic employee, fantastic organization. So if you're ever looking to move or change, you know what to do. Second thing to know is we have fantastic insurance products. So if you are looking for insurance, personal, corporate, semi, you know what to do. I'll move from here. Right. Okay, let's get to the agenda. Very quickly, a look back before we look into the future. So how did all this get started and how is it going? Right? It all started with low-cost setup. If you're old enough, you know Y2K. Big problem, needs to be solved, need to be done at scale. Someone else can do it and they can send it over. Let's go. Set it up in a low-cost center. Let's get it done. Then from there, it's scaling, it's standardizing, it's industrializing, it's automating, it's growing in scale, it's growing in scope, it's growing in complexity, to the point where I think most mature GBS today have a seat on the management, at least, a reporting line to CXO, and even through the CEO to the board, right? So GBS is not an unknown remote country thing anymore. It's really the top of line, especially the mature ones, right? So my first question, and we'll get to the polling in a second. So a mature GBS is a snapshot of the entire organization. And we have heard other speakers yesterday and today talk about it, saying we are not just a support for the business, we are the business, we are part of the business. So it is a company within the company. And slowly, and especially the mature GBS, they have almost all the functions to run a company in them today. So what's the gap between a GBS, think future, 3 years, 5 years, what's the gap? And how can we actually think that, well, you know, a company within a company can become the company in itself? And it's a question of maturity. It's a question of thinking. You will see a couple of impediments on the left, second, and the last point there. So some GBSs are not very close to clients, and sometimes they lack in front office business exposure, because sales support is slowly moving to GBS as well, but it's not there yet, right? So when you see on the right-hand side, then you see, okay, can we actually overcome these impediments and create value? The second point at the bottom, it's slightly different, so let me give it a few seconds. Some companies use GBS as a strategy to enter new markets, right? So they have good business in the US, in Europe, they want to enter in Asia, but they don't really know the market. Sometimes they go and set up a GBS in a center in that country or in that continent, give it a couple of years, gather data, have talent, get a feel for it, and then they go and form their business in there. So GBS can actually also be a leading strategy for business, right? We get to poll now. Please make sure you have your phones ready. So the question is, do you believe that your GBS, now think about what you are doing today, can that become a full commercial business in itself? 3 to 5 years horizon, please. I think we should be able to see live results in there once they start coming in. All right. Okay. It's moving. Okay. So 95, it's coming up to 100, but looks like pretty stable now. It seems majority of you think that your GBS can actually get there. It can overcome the impediments, get to actually being the business or very close to the business itself. That's great. Okay, this moved on its own, but that's my next point now. Okay, now don't think about the business of your company, think about GBS as a spin-off, right? And here we have examples. Genpact, one of the big ones, right? There are many other examples where GBS started off from the company, later they spin it off and it became a company that's providing services to other third parties, very successfully too. And that's a completely different thinking here. And here you have less impediments because you're already in the right place, you are already efficient, you have the scale, you have all the right characteristics to become that company. Couple of thinking points on the right-hand side. So if that happens, do you think that will be a win-win for your parent company? So the spin-off is providing a service back to your parent company, and it is also providing service to other companies, which might be your competitors, your peers, and so on. The impediment, and I think it's a small impediment this time, is that the mindset of the people should change from asking for budgets to do things to earning that budget to be able to invest into the company itself, right? So that's one change of mindset. But this one seems to be much easier than the previous question. So let's see what the answers are. Let's go to the poll. Do you believe that your GBS could turn into a commercial enterprise offering? So could it spin off and become a provider company? Oh, surprise. Okay, give it a few more seconds. Good. Interesting mix of audience, but surprising for me, because I would have thought this part for many GBS is easier and simpler step than the previous one. But it's the mix of the audience. As I said, you tell me the answers. I'm not telling you anything here. It's very interesting to know. If we have time in the end, it might be good to get some questions and talk through some of the experiences here as well. It's moving, but it looks pretty stable to me. So we can move to the next one. Getting to the topic of workforce of the future, right? So that was the headline topic which I should talk about. So the new workforce, right? Millennials and the others behind them, what do they want? They are extremely different for people like me. I mean, I'm pretty old compared to them. I talked about Y2K, obviously not. They value different things. They value flex work. They value the freedom more than the compensation. We have seen this quite a lot, right? The value and impact for them is much more important than other things. So it's amazing. We see in interview processes with the young ones, they ask about our sustainability policies. They ask about what are you doing to make a difference to this planet. We never had that before. We're not tuned to ask those kind of questions. So workforce is changing, and it will continue to change over the next 5, 10, 15 years drastically, right? As we get out and the new people get in, it's going to be very different. The view from management, however, is roughly the big ones remain the same. Still have to manage your cost, manage your complexity, you have to do stable service and so on. But a good trend that we see is as a service trend. Now, we have heard about this from many speakers yesterday and today, maybe they haven't called it as a service, but this is like outcome focused. So we don't care about how you do it, what products you use, what technologies you use. Provide it to me as a service, as an outcome of the service. And that brings a lot of change on what kind of people do you need to provide as a service outcome rather than someone doing a process and following a book here, right? So that's a big change from the management side coming into the workforce question. So if you look at, and what I'm getting to here is that the traditional operating model for the GBS is under pressure and it will need to change to something different. Those are the factors that will help it change. It will be location independent to a large extent. People are not going to care where are you providing that service from as long as it's seamlessly integrated into an outcome as a service, right? So the agile, I mean, it's something we are experimenting with. We are implementing agile organization in our function now. Very different from traditional hierarchical setup. So based on empowerment, based on agility, based on outcome focus, not command and control at all, because we know that's not going to make it in the next 5 to 7 years. I think someone talked about process efficiency, automation, exception-based. So the amount of processing that's being done by the people is reducing drastically. Someone said 15% yesterday. I would say that's a good ballpark. That's what would be left for an exception-based process. No one's going to sit there and enter data into something or look at a process going ahead. Right? Digital, value-based, I think that's clear. Change in the talent profile, talked about that. So all these things coming together will make the characteristic of a new operating model for the GBS in the future. Right? I think a polling question might be coming up. Right. So do you see this, is the question. Do you see this in your GBS, that you are getting challenged by this change? Or you think what we are doing is good enough, no need to change anything here? It will be very interesting. Wow, super clear answer. Excellent. Excellent. So it is changing, and we feel it. That's what I get from these results, that it is changing, we see it, we feel it, we need to do something about it. Okay, it's coming close to 100, but it's pretty stable, so happy to move on. It's no questions on this one. I just wanted to share a bit of how can we make the changes already today, right? So how can we create that culture? And I mean, there are textbooks, there are frameworks, there are lots of things going on in innovation, entrepreneurship, and so on. But I've boiled down, based on some of my experience from other places as well, what makes it work. So it's both top-down and bottom-up. I've seen many companies try to do it top-down alone. It doesn't work. You push and push and push, no. Bottom-up dies as well, because people are making the effort. If they don't see their management reacting to it, they say, okay, I'm not wasting my time on this. So the key is it has to be both ways. And they both have to meet in the middle for innovation and entrepreneurial culture to work. Right? I could have said a lot of things around budgeting, around agility, fast fail, and so on. But the biggest thing top-down for me, amongst even those three things that I've put, is the walk the talk. As long as the leaders don't do as they say, no one is going to listen to them. That's the biggest opportunity and impediment both to entrepreneurship and innovation. And from bottom up, I think it's much easier. It's people, especially the new generation that we talked about, they want to do things, they want to try it, but if we frustrate them, at some point they're going to say, okay, I don't want to do it anymore. Right? Some practical ideas, I don't see the time, maybe I can spend a couple of minutes on that. So some things that we have tried and it has really worked for us, Power Weeks. Right? So we do these Power Weeks where we bring all the cross-functional people together for 1 week. It used to be physical, it's virtual now, for solving a particular problem. So we do a lot of pre-work, right? We do the requirements, we understand what to do, bring people together. Okay, we need these kind of team with 7 people. Let's get them all together. And in that 1 week, we solve a problem. Not talking about a demo, not talking about a pilot, we actually solve the problem. We either build a bot, or we implement a process change, or we do something that people can see, yes, I can actually get the results from it, right? And that works really well, because once you are successful, people come back for the next Power Week saying, hey, last time we did this, you solved my workflow problem so well, I'm going to do this again to solve my next problem. Right? So it builds the pipeline of challenges that we might have there as well. Easy culture characteristics. I think, again, some of the speakers have talked about this in different ways, but for me, culture characteristics are bite-sized things that you can bring into everyday conversation, right? Data-driven. But ask every time you are in a meeting, are we being data-driven? Are we taking our decisions that is data-driven? Right? Results first. Okay. If that's your cultural characteristic, you ask that question again and again and again until it becomes a habit. Are we being of startup mindset? Would a startup do what we are doing? Would they follow a 6 months long budgeting process to get some funds in? Of course not, right? Keep it alive. I think that's easy, because we just talked about innovation is very easy to die if it doesn't see the momentum. So really important, we keep it alive, focus it, make sure everyone talks about it. Last battle is, of course, communication of success. If you do something, make sure everyone hears about it 100 times over. Good. I see the time now, so I'll move a little bit more. So skills and capabilities for workforce of future. Again, I've simplified it so much. What do we need in future? We need some hard skills around technology and data in the context of your organization, in the context of your industry, but people who can understand technology, people who can understand data. That's really going to be basic. On the soft side, you're looking for embracing and thriving in change. So you don't want people who want to do same thing over and over again for next 20 years. Absolutely not. Disruptive mindset. So people who are willing to put themselves out there, come up with ideas and say, let's make a difference. So those mindsets are really important. And then the last two, my favorite, diversity. I don't need to explain. I think we have seen enough of that. Without diversity, companies are not going to survive anymore. Confluence of skill, that's my favorite. So we don't need one skill anymore. We don't need two skills anymore. We need multiple skills in one person together going forwards. That's the confluence of skills. I think those will be the most valued people who can bring together technology, data, industry knowledge, process knowledge, and so on. Right? So you don't, if someone is purely a data expert, has limited expertise, limited use there. Confluence of skills. I think that's going to be the key word for future. I think polling question is based on recruitment, so I should maybe talk about that first. It's not going back, but let's, okay. We already see the answers. What I meant here was, in many cases, the recruitment practices are lagging behind what's needed for the future. The recruitment practices today are geared up for today and not for tomorrow. We see this over and over again. Someone leaves a job, and then the next job is filled, or the role profile is always about someone who has been doing invoice processing for the last 10 years using SAP and this technology and so on. That's not the skills for future. If we go in that direction with recruitment, you're never going to get the future today. Right? So it's really key, whether it's external, whether it's internal, it doesn't matter. And it's one more thing I should point out. The gap between the hiring manager and the person in front of recruitment is very high at the moment. The person who's actually interviewing, maybe conducting the first interview, but doing the screening of the profiles, they are not very well connected to the person who's actually recruiting, who has in his mind something else, but a job profile, the traditional job profile, does not do justice to what we need today. So that really needs to change. And honestly, the answers speak for themselves even before I said anything. So very mature audience, I think you know your challenges. Grant, I think that was it from me. We'll take some questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ruchir. That was excellent. Sure. Tell us, I guess, you talked about spin-off and making the GBS organization quite commercial. Are you guys entirely in-house? Do you use a mix of models? How do you decide?
Yeah, I think that's why you saw the disclaimer. These views are not of Zurich, but I can answer the question. We have a mishmash. We have things that are outsourced. We have things that are in-house. We have, even within GBS, we have multiple models We have a hotel model, we have a service model, depending on the need. Some of this is legacy driven as well. But yes, commercialization, not specific to GBS, but commercialization is a big focus for us.
Fantastic, fantastic, great stuff. I can see there's some questions coming in from the QR code. What was the turning point for Zurich in identifying the need for GBS?
It's a hard one to answer because Zurich has evolved over a number of years, 10, 15 years, in its GBS thinking as well. Traditionally, we had almost everything outsourced. We had smaller centers in some countries. In Spain, we had something. Bratislava, we had something. Mostly driven by capabilities, right? So Bratislava is more actuarial for us, for example. Spain is more technical for us. Poland is based around finance. So this came out of need and necessity of functions. Now we have I wouldn't say we are identifying the need for GBS, but we are trying to optimize how we work together with our partners now.
Fantastic. I think we've got time for one last one. Has the pandemic and the rise in virtual working extended how far you can take GBS?
Absolutely. I think pandemic has been a game changer for us. How we work, where we work. You remember I talked about location independent. GBS, I mean, for most of us, was centered around location, was based around people being in the same place at the same time in a low-cost location. Scale was a big factor there, right? You have a location, you need to have a minimum scale to make it work. All those paradigms are being challenged now. Do we really need a physical space? Do we really need to bring everyone together? Do we really need a minimum scale to actually work in this new model? There's a lot of questions that have been challenged by pandemic. We don't have clear answer. We will see how it evolves, but we are thinking in those lines. We are thinking of how can we allow flexibility? How can we tap into the talent which was not possible because we were limited to certain locations, right? So some interesting conversations to be seen.
Fantastic. And one last one.
Sure.
How should the recruitment of talent for the future look like? What are the key characteristics we should be looking for?
Great. I don't think I can talk about all the characteristics, but what I would say is let's start with the job profiles. I think the current job profiles for most of the companies are completely outdated. Things that we put over there, I mean, you just look at some of these job profiles and that's horrific. I mean, the technology is 2-year-old and people are asking for 5 years of experience in that technology. Come on. I think we need to bring some common sense. We need to bring some agility into that process and say, okay, guys, in 5 sentences, I can tell you what I'm looking for. Have you got these things or not? That should be it, right?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ruchir. Really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks, Vinay.